Hi, I'm Brad. And that's it. It is now 2024, a new year to either cope about things or doom about things. In previous years, I would do these sort of follow-up videos where if I made a video about something earlier on and I felt I either missed something or just have updates about the topic I wanted to touch on. Now, I haven't done one of those follow-up videos in a considerably long time, and now that it's the new year, well, sort of the new year, I've kind of been late getting this video out. I thought it would be a good time to recap some of the major videos I had this year and just things I feel about them and just, yeah, a follow-up. This video is going to be very podcasty style, very off the wall. I don't really have any plans for this video, but there are definitely things that I either feel frustrated about or kind of sad about, actually, not doing certain things in previous content. So let's get right into those things. Now, the first big videos I made in 2023 were all about CES, which those videos did pretty well, and I don't have too much to add on top of them, but I do want to talk about CES as it feels right now, being in the XR industry, because I've been talking to some people and getting this feeling that while I am going to CES next week, me and other people don't feel interested as much. Last year, the big star of the show was PSVR 2. We knew Sony was going to be there. We knew they were going to show it off to people. And for many of us, this would be our first time trying it. And I did try it. And like everything else at these trade shows that make me also less excited about going to them these days, they are extremely controlled. The people always tell you what you want to hear. Like, it's a magic show. It just doesn't feel right until you get products in your hands to review and decide things for yourself. One thing I remember pretty vividly from that show was, of course, the Horizon Call of the Mountain demo that they gave to me and many other people. And I remember there was this thing going around where I was one of the earliest people to try it during the show. And I was running into a lot of problems because I changed the settings related to being able to artificial locomote myself, like actually smooth turn and all that stuff, I remember. And everything was breaking in the game. Things looked really bad. There was a lot of reprojection artifacting. It was bad, right? And I pointed it out to the person that was giving me the demo, and the rest of the entire show, from what I understand after my demo, they would not let people try those things. And the blame was like I broke something so no one else could do it. But looking back on it, that was kind of like sort of the first warning that there was something off about PSVR 2's reprojection system, because that was one of the biggest problems that I felt around it. It was not good back then. It was probably even worse than when it came out for launch for that title. In fact, if I want to touch on a little bit more on PSVR 2, so later on, obviously, I would get the actual headset. I would buy the PS5 and everything. And I gave the headset a pretty fairly negative review. In fact, I said there was not much content to really keep me there as someone who is a VR veteran, at least, who has other platforms I can go to at any time because I have that luxury. But also, there were things that Sony decided to do in that headset that I never felt were beginner friendly for VR users. Like, the persistence was high, the actual screen door effect, like, just it didn't feel like a headset that had a long-term plan or anything going on. It felt like Sony kind of just threw it out there with not much support or thought. And I know that's very harsh to say, but looking back on it now, like it's way more months past my original review, I still kind of feel that way. And I know a lot of people feel I'm a sort of like this Sony PSVR hater. And no, because I was actually really excited for the headset, mainly because I really still believe that compute power is so important when you're doing anything with VR gaming. And even though I'm falling out of the interest of VR gaming, and I'll touch a little bit more upon that later on, I don't know. I really felt that the PlayStation 5 with its beefed up APU inside would really kind of revitalize this sort of target for processing power for gaming. And it did. Like, we had some pretty cool titles on there, especially at launch. But after that, not really. I keep seeing people from the community getting frustrated with Sony that they're not announcing any big titles. The big one that recently came out was Resident Evil 4 Remake, and that was notable, but it wasn't like screamed at the rooftop, I noticed. And from what I hear is PSVR 2 is just not doing that well to begin with. So when I see stuff like that, I see the original investment from Sony to be kind of low. I think back to the time that I had a PS Vita, and I loved that thing. I thought the PS Vita was a fantastic handheld. I wanted to buy all the games for it all the time, and then it just failed. Basically, it didn't sell well in the United States, and Sony basically dropped support in a very, well, yeah, we care about it, but not really sort of way. And I see a lot of like comparisons between my time with PS Vita and what I'm seeing from PSVR 2 that makes me really nervous for people that invested in that console, and even more nervous for people who bought the console and got sick in that console, because I still feel there's a lot of other things that headset has not actually updated to improve some of those scathing problems for people. Now, for people who are enjoying the console, enjoying games like Gran Turismo, I hear a lot of people constantly go to that. That's fantastic. I'm really happy for you, but I don't know. I don't feel terrible at this point in time giving the PSVR 2 kind of a more negative, grounded review. If we're going to talk about other headsets, I do kind of want to touch on Quest Pro a little bit. Even though this was not a 2023 video, it was right at the end of 2022 where I spent a lot of time in the Quest Pro. And that was probably one of my most negative videos in a while. I was again, this was another piece of hardware I was extremely excited for. So when I usually get excited for something, it probably makes my videos a bit more harsh when they don't pan out the way I hope they will. And that was definitely what was happening with the Quest Pro. I was so excited that Meta was finally going to target these higher price range, feature heavy, not this balls to the wall cheapness that we kind of see with Quest 2 or did see with Quest 2. Now, the problem with the Quest Pro, looking back on it, again, another video I think aged very well for my channel. That headset actually bombed, like absolutely bombed. It's very popular among certain communities that like to do eye and face tracking, with VR chat, and I think that's great. But you can just tell that headset did not do well. And a lot of it is like, when I think back to it is, even though the fact that it had a low resolution and like compared to the Quest 3 now and some other like poor mixed reality, really, I just think about how bad the software launch was for that thing. I mean, again, the Wi-Fi did not really work well. There was no good titles that like showcase some of the features. It's really crazy to me. It's like if Apple just released an iPhone with no apps. And I feel that way so strongly because obviously the focus in the XR industry right now is the concepts that Meta was trying to push with the Quest Pro. This productivity, lifestyle focus, getting people to do more than gaming. And I think that was the right track, but Meta released nothing to show people this is why you should spend $1,500 to use our headset. And again, I want them to push that again. I think with Quest 3, I said in my Quest 3 review video, it's Quest 3 is a great headset. And if you took some of that stuff and like upgraded it to a Quest Pro tier headset, I think the hardware will be way more fantastic than the Quest Pro ever was during launch. I mean, you've got new chips going out, good stuff, right? But again, the software side, I don't think Meta is in the right place with first-party apps at all to do any of the stuff that they want to if they want to compete with Apple. It's, again, just a bittersweet thing. I know a lot of people who bought Quest Pro, despite my warnings, friends of mine who bought Quest Pro, and a lot of them have actually switched to other headsets, including the Quest 3 at this point. So I feel bad for people who spent $1,500. I remember people who got mad at me for saying it's not worth $1,500, and now it's retails for $1,000, but you can find them on aftermarket for like $500 to $700 sometimes. It was around $500. Then the Steam Link app came out, which allowed people to do easier eye and face tracking directly in VR chat, for example, connected to their PC. And that kind of rose the price up a little bit in the aftermarket, which is pretty funny. Now, going back to my kind of comments about CES and why it's not as interesting this year, it's no offense to anyone that's showcasing there in the XR, but talking to people, everyone feels like CES is just way smaller this year when it comes to XR, AR, VR stuff. And it's mostly because everyone's waiting for Apple right now. Like, really, you just feel that in the air where people are like, I can go to CES, I can try Chinese headsets or whatever, but you're not seeing any big commitments from companies. You're not seeing anything big. Everyone's waiting for the Apple Vision Pro. Companies are trying to see what they do to handle certain things and probably have their own version of it next year as best as they can. And that does make me want to talk about Apple Vision Pro a little bit because people keep asking me if I am going to get one, which is hilarious because I can't imagine a scenario where I don't buy it. Actually, I am gonna be one of those people that try to get day one, and even though it's so expensive and all this stuff, and it's not gaming focused, the stuff I've seen from Apple Vision Pro, even right now, it's been a while since I've been so excited to try out a headset and use it and buy one actually. But of course, as I said earlier in this video, that also means this hype level might actually crash. And when I get a whole month of usage and make a review out of it, we'll see how it holds up. But this idea of spatial computing, which is just a marketing term, by the way, this is still an AR VR headset. It's not that much different than what we've seen. It just got that Apple marketing spin, and they're going to do things that are strange and different, but the target of this leaving just VR gaming and like doing other things, I think is really good for this industry. And while I don't think it's going to explode, like take us into this extreme mainstream that everyone's always talking about, like, oh, we're never going to use laptops again, we're never going to use iPads again, we're those phones, this is the next generation phone. Nothing like that at all. And I don't think it has to be. Like, I never really feel this industry has to replace a smartphone. Like, that's so stupid to me. Every product has its strengths and weaknesses. And I think Apple's going to do their thing to XR. And I think it's going to do very well in those things. But it's not going to stop all the other companies that care to invest about the stuff that you got into XR or VR and AR to begin with. And there's probably some things where, because it's so different, people are going to develop experiments for it and learn new things, what is good for UX or UI. And those are going to translate to some of the stuff you like about XR. So again, I am really excited about it. I think the hardware is going to be beautiful. I think the visuals are going to ruin me for some other headsets I use. And yeah, I'm still very excited about it. And it sounds like it will be very, very soon before we actually can buy it and get it in our hands. So yeah, I am still on the Apple Vision Pro hype train. Now, I do want to touch on the rest of the things I saw at CES 2023 a little bit, because I don't have too much to update, but there are a couple things that I feel are kind of important to touch on. And the biggest one is trying out the Pimax Crystal for the real first time. I tried the Crystal a couple months before that, and it was not a very good demo. And I was kind of surprised a couple months later. They did fix a lot of things with that original demo back in like late 2022, but CES, there was more problems that arose from that event. And I just want to talk about Pimax Crystal a little bit more, because that was a headset I gave a really, really bad review on. I borrowed it for a week, and that headset was a problem to deal with. I did not have fun using that headset, and it was a lot to do with the software experience. And I'm not a Pimax buyer or owner. I don't want to wait or deal with some of these constant problems that they came out with. But now, months later, there is one thing that sort of happened to Pimax Crystal that kind of interests me about it a little more. I have some friends who recently bought some, and I also have friends that recently sold some. But there's still problems. There's still a lot of software problems from what I understand. But the one thing I also complained about from the hardware, and this is more to do with the lens choices that not only Pimax use, but a lot of other companies that are not big, giant companies are using. Aspheric lenses. Now, disclaimer, I am not a simmer. I do not spend all of my time in VR, or any of my time for that matter, sitting in front of a cockpit or a racing wheel or anything like that. I don't do that stuff. Now, when you have that in mind, you have to understand when I try something like the Pimax Crystal with, yes, very good visuals and clarity and all that stuff, as someone who does other things that are not simming, I feel aspheric lenses do suffer from problems that have caused these big companies to completely skip aspheric lenses and go straight to pancake. You always have to wonder why companies do certain choices for their hardware. And with Pimax Crystal, I had a lot of problems with the warping. When I moved my head at the edges of the lenses, you would just see a lot of warping, and it was just not enjoyable of an experience for me. And the one thing that the industry has known for a while, even for aspheric lenses, like back way before they've started becoming more popular in these products, is you could actually use aspheric lenses and do pretty well, but you would need very good eye tracking to do a dynamic a distortion profile that allows you to kind of change what the displays show based on where your head is moving and your eyes are looking to solve some of that warping. And there's this company that's been out there for a while called AlmaLens who actually released something for the Pimax Crystal that makes me kind of want to try it, because I told my friends about it because I was already interested in it. And they tried it and they said, wow, it really improved the visuals of the Pimax Crystal. And I really want to highlight that, not because it's anything that I think Pimax is doing well. I think it was a very good choice for them to allow AlmaLens to come in there and add their licenses to it. But really, I just wanted to use this whole spiel to talk about the importance of eye tracking, because we always hear the common use cases where it's good for social VR, obviously. It's good for the idea of foveated rendering, or even foveated bandwidth and encoding to improve some of that actual data that's being transferred either wirelessly or through wires as you get to these higher resolutions. But also optimize distortion profiles based on where you're looking. And again, I just think about like the Apple Vision Pro that's using 2 cameras per eye, which no product has even come close to that in today's consumer market. Quest Pro had a pretty good eye tracking stuff, but they did not really do anything with it. I want more eye tracking. Eye tracking should be standard in every headset because it just offers so much UI navigation. It's just crazy. And yeah, just wanted to give that little spiel a bit. A couple other headsets I'll just kind of breeze through from CES. There was the Lynx R1 that I tried for the first time for a very short demo. I don't have much to say about it now. They did sort of soft launch late last year, but they actually delayed a lot of their shipments still to Kickstarter backers. And even the people that have gotten it, they said it's okay, but it just came out way too late. Like, it's getting to the point where the Apple Vision Pro is probably going to release before the Lynx R1 is going to finish sending all their backers, all the headsets. And they've also pivoted to enterprise. They do have direct access to the cameras, which has some value to certain things. But really, the Lynx R1 is one of those situations where they did a Kickstarter and they did pretty well. I like the team at Lynx, but they're at a point where it's really hard to compete with what they're trying to do. And even at the enterprise market that they're trying to pivot to make Lynx R1 more expensive, I don't think it's going to work well with the current hardware they're using. And I know hardware is hard and all these other things. I think some of the things they do in their design is very clever. But yeah, Lynx R1 seems to be in just not doing well. Another headset that was not doing well that I tried at CES, and I actually gave, even at CES, I tried it and I said it was just not good, was the ShiftAll MeganeX. And that is a headset that has been in production or pre-production for so many years. It's a partnership with Panasonic. It looks funny. It's got the big circle eyes. Trying to do the sunglasses look, which I can rant all about that sort of decision. But it looked bad at CES last year. It looked worse than the year before. And from what I understand is they only did a short selling of it in Japan. They did like a lottery to allow people to buy it. And the product completely bombed. You're probably not going to see that version of the MeganeX anywhere outside of Japan because it just did not do well. And for what it's worth, I think kind of deserved. Like, I think even though Beyond, which I'm going to talk about later in this video, has its problems, I would have still preferred the Beyond over what I last saw of the MeganeX visuals. So, yeah. Final things from my last tour that I want to touch up on CES 2023. Haptics. It seems like CES has a ton of stuff related to haptics every year, and none of it feels exciting to me or different. And I'm not saying that haptics have no value. I think haptics have a ton of value for XR. I think input, especially with your hands and like feeling inputs, is incredibly important and makes me the most worried about Apple's offering more than anything else. It's just, you need feedback. I really think touching the air and doing stuff is awkward, and just feels good to have either some sort of feedback coming from that. And one point of feedback that I tried while I was at CES was the OWO suit. And I don't have much more to add to it. Basically, you would strap these electrodes all over you, and it would basically like give you a little shock in different areas based on what was happening in the game. And I said I did not like it. And thinking back to it now, I like it even less. Like, there's nothing about that demo I think was interesting. The only reason I wanted to bring it up is because recently I tried the Tesla suit, which is it's like thousands of dollars, right? Extremely expensive, not even really usable. Like, yeah, they tried to advertise it as like a mocap and like immersive thing for VR at one point, but it's more like a enterprise and like research tool more than anything else. And that is basically the OWO suit on steroids. They have electrodes in your pants and all over your body. It's many zones, and I will say that was a much better experience than OWO suit, but even still, I don't really think that simulating pain by shocking you is that immersive. And I also feel that way about a lot of vibration haptics you have to put on. I'm just not convinced that haptics are in a really, for your body, I don't think it's coming very soon where it's that usable. Now, might be a couple places where I do think haptics is very valuable, like on the head. I think one thing I liked about PSVR 2 was having that feedback on your head was pretty great. And there might be some benefits to, if you're already attaching trackers onto your body, like your belt and your feet to do full body tracking, there might be value there to have sort of like these vibrations just added to your experience. I will try something like that this year at CES, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, haptics still feels like in a really weird place where it's like, I got the full B-haptic stuff, but I'm not interested. Now, the next thing is the most surprising thing for me at 2023 was sort of the BigScreen Beyond, actually. And I don't mean like surprising as it existed, because obviously I saw it like 2 years almost before they actually launched the thing. I remember talking to the developers at BigScreen, and like they were talking about how they had these ideas of how many they would sell. And I thought they were really too optimistic, honestly. Like, I remember telling them, this seems really niche. It's a good headset for what it does, but I just could not imagine it catching on, right? I was so wrong. Like, honestly, I was really wrong. And even though it is still kind of like this niche sort of area of VR, it's done exceedingly much better than my expectations were. The amount of interest I hear from people online, the amount of people who did videos on it. Linus Tech Tips doing a video on it was shocking to me, because they're not really a channel that does too much VR. Like, they did PSVR 2, but yeah, they're far from the VR circle, right? And seeing stuff like that, how they're like loved it and were interested in these product, was quite interesting. Now, I do want to talk about some of the downsides now that I've talked to people who've gotten it, because a lot of people even watched my videos back when, you know, the first NDA lifted or whatever, and I can actually talk about it. And a lot of people bought it because of me, which always feels weird. I always feel weird about being this sort of influencer thing. It's never gotten comfortable for me. But Big Screen has had a mixed reception, I feel, from actual users. I know people who have absolutely loved the thing and cannot imagine using anything more heavy or different. But I've also run into a lot of people who have had to actually RMA their Big Screen Beyonds only because the actual face scan that would recommend them an IPD was not correct. So they would get the headset, they would put it on, IPD would just be off like even like a couple millimeters, and guess what? The lenses are not edge to edge clarity like you get from Quest 3. They're far from that. If you're dialed in and you're in that sweet spot, great visuals in my opinion. I still think it's really good. But it's not Quest 3 optics, and people who get the wrong IPD would literally be on the edges. Their middle of their eye would be on edges, the clearness, and it would look really bad and very just bleh, right? And I've talked to a lot of people who have had to do this, and it must be really expensive for Big Screen to have to take back return headsets, either reassemble them, change IPD plates, and then send it back or whatever. That cannot be cheap, right? And I know their big shtick is like every gram matters, but I think not having an IPD slider built in has been very destructive for their device and probably how much money they could be spending on it. I think if they ever did do a Big Screen Beyond 2, I actually think they should not focus too much on making it smaller or anything. I think it could have been a little bit bigger actually, with a little bit more features, a little bit more adjustments going on there. But otherwise, Big Screen Beyond, I still actually daily drive it. It's not like because I have to, obviously. It's either that or the Quest 3. I always go between those two headsets depending on what I'm doing. If I'm not in my VR room, yeah, I'm gonna use the Quest 3 to do wireless stuff sometimes. But if I'm in my actual dedicated VR room, that comfort again is just something. It fits my head perfectly. My IPD is dialed in. I like the headset still. So yeah, just wanted to touch on a Big Screen Beyond and like some of their successes and failures up to this point. Now there's something in this video I want to touch on that's actually not hardware focused, which I know is might shock you, right? Wow, Brad, not talking about VR hardware, doing software. Whoa. I want to talk about stuff I see a lot in my comment sections and on Twitter and stuff. And it's the complaint that I talk a lot about hardware, but I don't talk about games or some of the content that's being released for these platforms. And I think they think I'm not talking about it to kind of discredit some of the work going in there. And that's not it at all. It's more the fact that I think 2023 was really the year I realized that VR games as they are right now, most of them aren't interesting to me. And again, it's not that I don't think there's a lot of developers working hard and trying to create good experiences, but I've noticed even playing the biggest games that released this year, and there have been some pretty big ones in 2023. I played Call of the Mountain, the Horizon game for PSVR 2, which I actually liked a lot. But I noticed a lot of flag gamers that came to that Horizon game actually did not like it because it wasn't as big and exploratory as the regular Horizon games. I thought that was actually really good for a VR game. I thought that was perfect. They showed the strengths of VR, what it can do, some of the cool things you can do, and the funness of it. The reprojection sucked and made me sick as a dog, but still was a very fun game. I just wish I could play on different hardware. But other games like Assassin's Creed, I played it. I didn't finish it. I played a few hours, I think, and I was way more impressed with the amount of effort Ubisoft put into it. Don't get me wrong, like it was really exciting to do the gesture to make your knife come out and stuff, but didn't finish the game, didn't feel compelled to. And I tried Asgard's Wrath 2, which, and again, if you enjoyed any of these games that I'm kind of pointing out as like why I don't like VR gaming, that's fine. I think you are the ones that are fueling this industry or like giving people money, right? But anyway, Asgard's Wrath 2 especially, a lot of people enjoyed it. A lot of people were talking about it. Very big game, extremely expensive game to make. Many hours of gameplay in that game. Probably if you're interested in VR gaming still, that would be a game to buy. But for me, let's talk about for me. When I played Asgard's Wrath 2, something clicked in my brain like almost immediately that this is why I don't like VR gaming right now. So I want to give a little background to why I got into VR. And yes, I got into VR because I wanted something new for gaming. I was getting tired and kind of cynical and bored of most of the 2D games releasing non-VR. So when I tried some of the early experiments and demos for the Vive, I was blown away about the potential that this medium can give. And remember, this was like very basic experiments compared to some of the stuff you see now. You didn't have any artificial locomotion, everything was teleport, but there was this spatial awareness to everything in the game, and everything you did had so much meaning to it. I thought if every game was like that back then gaming could be very interesting for me again. And it was. When Half-Life Alyx came out, especially, that game literally blew my mind, and it kind of changed me. In fact, like I remember getting out of Half-Life Alyx from playing it so often that even in real life, I was doing the gravity glove gesture like an idiot, trying to pull stuff into real life, which is stupid, I know, but I've never had stuff like that before in any other medium that I've done, where it just completely activates a neuron in my brain that makes me think I can do stuff like that. And I've never come close to that after Half-Life Alyx. I never had things that were so impactful and powerful that it really made me feel like the real life could be transitioned very well into a VR gaming format. And with Asgard's Wrath 2, just to use them as an example, definitely a ton of work and content put in that game. I think it's great, great for that. But it also felt like a flat game to me still. Like I still got the same feelings from a AAA flat game. I didn't feel like it was a AAA VR game that much. It felt very similar to me to like when Bethesda ported Skyrim to VR. Now, obviously, Sanzaru's Asgard's Wrath 2 is still way better than Skyrim was in that port, but still, I just felt like it has a big budget. It's got all this content, but there were small things I kept running into in that game that just made me realize this is annoying to do in VR. This is not making me want to put on the headset and come back to and play all the hours that they're advertising. In fact, I was thinking to myself the entire time, what is stopping me from just, if this was possible, playing it as a flat game? Would I have a better experience playing Asgard's Wrath 2 as a flat game? And the truth is, I feel that way about a lot of VR games that are this extreme feeling, right? And again, basically, the only things I'm interested when it comes to XR stuff right now is this spatial computing. I think productivity and lifestyle, I do think XR is getting to the point where it can make just life feel better from everything you do on the daily. And also social VR. Social VR is extremely the use case for me. Like I don't know, I love being in VR chat and stuff, and making that VR chat experience more immersive, and seeing the experimental nature of VR chat and hanging out with people. But VR gaming, I think it caters too much to the flat gaming crowd coming in. And it makes sense why games like Gorilla Tag that are just, this seems so bizarrely popular, why they are popular, because you can't do Gorilla Tag in a flat VR game. It wouldn't translate well. So yeah, that's how I feel about VR gaming. There was, again, big games, but if you ever wonder why I'm not playing every VR game, it's just I don't get that enjoyment that maybe some of you do. And if you do, that's great. Fantastic. Now, obviously, I could not do this video without talking about Valve, right? Like, obviously, a lot of this channel has been Valve Copium, what they're doing in VR. And I think the big things that happened this year for Valve is obviously SteamVR 2.0 releasing. That wasn't too much of a shock to a lot of us. In fact, we were kind of predicting that for sure in our discourse and stuff. Like it made sense. Um, Now, something that really caught us off guard was Steam Link on Quest. That was wild. Like, wow, I never would have expected something like that to exist, and it's pretty good. Steam Link is very good. I don't think I made a video on this channel talking about it, but I think Steam Link was especially interesting to see what they did with the Quest Pro hardware. Like, it did stuff like foveate encoding, so you would have it wasn't foveate rendering. You would have like a circle in the middle of your vision that was the most clear, and they would foveate, make the edges of your display lower resolution because when they transfer that data across the network, they wanted less data being transferred to have a better latency. Very high focus on latency more than everything else that you might get from virtual desktop, which I think for Valve makes sense. They've always kind of prioritized like that visual and physical comfort when you're in VR, because people do get sick, and adding more latency to VR, you know, can make some people more sick than just using a wire. So I think what they're doing with Steam Link is pretty good. I usually go between it and virtual desktop depending on what I'm doing, because for gaming, Steam Link is fine, but for anything else, that foveation feels a little bit a bit too much sometimes, unless you again have Quest Pro and you can move that circle. But I don't use Quest Pro. That thing is just not comfortable for me. But yeah, another thing about SteamVR 2.0, very very nice to see what they've been doing to it. I think the focus on how easy it is to create and access overlays, the theater mode, and some of that stuff, very good stuff. One sad thing about it, ever since they launched SteamVR 2.0, data mining has been extremely dry. And to be fair, that's fine. I'm okay. How do I put this? I was data mining SteamVR with my friends and stuff because it was just kind of fun for me. Like it really was fun. And I'm kind of at the point where I'm burnt out from that fun. Where whenever we did have like a big data mine, trying to put things together and solve the mystery has become less fun for me. So I think it's kind of a blessing that Valve is actually caring what they put into their code and not being as sloppy or whatever. But there are still many things that were data mined related to their next hardware project, related to their next stuff in VR, that are still not in SteamVR 2.0 or in Steam Link. A lot of people keep asking me about that, and yeah, there are still things out there that we have not seen. And we'll see. Maybe in 2024 we'll get more stuff on the Valve front that is pretty cool. Now, the final thing I want to touch on a little bit, and I don't have too much to add based on my original Quest 3 review, but yeah, I just said it. Quest 3. I'm very happy still with that hardware and how it's been kind of growing and the software stuff that's been going on. I still don't feel that mixed reality for gaming is that interesting. Again, I've been watching all the stuff that's been coming out, but again, I still think mixed reality right now is still good for like browsing stuff, flat displays, making those displays maybe more 3D or volumetric. But yeah, it's good to see a better baseline for what developers can do with mixed reality than Quest Pro, because I think, again, despite the Quest 3 still not blowing me away in terms of mixed reality, still way better than Quest Pro ever was in that. And in the PC VR sphere, a lot of people are buying Quest 3 or either upgrading the Quest 3 to use it as a PC VR headset. And I think that is a very reasonable decision because I think at the end of my Quest review, I said it's probably the only Quest headset I've actually liked a lot, and I still feel that way immensely. And yeah, it's a good headset. I think it deserves some of the success it's getting. Quest Pro 2, please. Yeah, we'll see. It was a pretty interesting year for me. In fact, I don't want to say it was a big year of growth or anything. There was actually a lot of downs that I felt during that year that I had to overcome emotionally. But it was really the year that I think some of the things I was doing has hit its stride. I kind of been able to find myself as a channel most probably the past year and figure out things I think I can do well on YouTube and other things. And I'm very thankful for the people that support me. This is not an advertisement or anything, but I do want to talk about like the financial stability of doing this channel. And I do not make a profit at all on this channel. And a lot of it's to do with the fact that I don't make enough videos for sure. And the reason why I don't make enough videos is it's really hard for me to psych myself up to talk about something unless I'm really excited about it. Now, it's gotten to the point though now where I have to figure something out if I want to keep doing this. So I'm really trying to figure out how I can like change my mentality on it and make this something I want to do truly full time. Like, yes, I am doing this kind of full time, but I want to make this channel like actually livable and allow I have a wife, by the way, and she's a lot of reason why this channel exists. But I really want to make this channel something where both of us can live off of, and like it would not be stressful every time that I look at my bank account when I buying a new headset to make a review. I want to make this something that's more reliable. So I don't think there'll be too many changes, but you might see more like off the wall podcasty content about things that are not as like exciting as some of the other videos I like to make, but I need to figure out something. And I think that's kind of the way that I'm going to ease into it. Another thing I really want to do, but I haven't really figured out yet, is because I do like talking unhinged without any sort of script. I do that anyway. This whole video is unscripted. I think if I do like sort of like maybe a monthly live stream or something there, I think that would be pretty good, but I'm not sure yet how I'm gonna go about it. Maybe if I can do a podcast with someone that is a little bit more optimistic about things than me, that would be a good partner. But I still haven't decided who I would want to do for that, and maybe take that and build off of it a little bit. But I gotta do something to do more content, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we can make this profitable. But I'm very extremely thankful for every single person that watches. Like, it's crazy. It's shocking to me when I go into VR chat public lobby or something and people just recognize me. I never get used to that feeling, and like they always get so excited to talk to me and stuff and like all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'm so sorry, I'm awkward. I don't know how to deal with this. But yeah, it's people are very kind to me, and yeah, that's all I really want to say. It was a pretty cool year. I hope 2024 is more interesting. I think it will be, but yeah, that's it. Have a wonderful year, and see you next week if I decide that there's anything interesting at CES to make videos about. Bye.